This Sicha is going to be about the inyan of Purim Katan, which we just finished, but it really informs the whole month of Adoration, and the Rebbe is going to come up with an amazing chiddush, b'negeya, what Purim Katan teaches us, the way it's set up in Shulchan Aruch. In Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, it's the last halacha, the last siman in Orach Chaim, in the big Shulchan Aruch, is what the Ramah speaks about Purim Katan. And that's what the whole Sikh is going to go about. And from this, the Rebbe is going to say, we can take a hira in Simcha in general, and how Simcha is for the whole year. Okay. Siyam Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, hu ba'Halochos of Purim, Hilchos Megillah. Because, he'll soon explain, because Orach Chaim follows the Seder of the Shana, the Seder HaYom, or B'Siman HaAchron of the Halochos of Purim, Medubar Oides Dinne Yudalad V'Tazvav Adoration, known as Purim Katan and Shushan Purim Katan. So the Rebbe says, Hatam Lakach V'Pashtasu, Mekivim Shalafi Seder HaShana, Kifi Shebetur V'Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Mechulokes Halochos Zmane Umayade HaShana, in other words, after going through the Seder HaYom, he starts off with the Hashkamas HaBoiker, and then he goes all the way till nighttime to Krishim Shalmita and so on. So then, once he's finished with the Seder HaYom, and he goes through Shabbos, then he goes through the Yom Tovim, Reish Chodesh, and then Vlacher Mekain Chodesh Nisan, Hilchos Pesach Chulu. So if you go, you start from Nisan, and you go all the way around the year, so you end up with other Magim Din Purim L'Basayf. So if you're going in that cheshbon, so other Rishon is in the first, is before other Sheni. So Purim Katan comes before the regular Purim. So maybe if we're going according to the order of the year, so Purim Katan should have been before. Masha Dinah Yudal V'Tazvav other Rishon Mafiyim B'Siyam Hilchos Megillah L'Acher Hilchos Purim. Afal Pisha B'Shana Mubaras Gufahim Kedum B'Zman L'Hilchos Purim Shabbat Sheni. U'Mekiven She'ein Dinam Elon Noigim B'Chol Shana. It only comes out every few years where you have a Shana Mubaras, Kim B'Shana Mubaras. U'Lefichach L'Dinei Purim Magdima. It's like Tadir V'She'ein Tadir Kaidim. The Rebbe is going to insert that Tadir. The word Tadir is going to insert later on. Another reason that Rebbe gives, not just because it only happens once every 3 years or so, but another reason also. That you're not allowed to fast in those days, you're not allowed to have espedim. Why do we keep the mitzvahs of Purim Katan? Because it's like the regular Purim. So first you got to tell us about Purim. Koloimar hadinim v'achiyuvim shibiyudal v'tesvav adoration. Einoi from our playing, we don't say tachnun, v'einam mizmriyan chashem yem tzara, kapitel chaf, lamatzeach, v'asurim, behesped v'tainis. Einam kshurim b'inyanim hamyuchet shel yamim eilu shebechodesh mitzad atzma. Because there's something special about Yudalad of adoration. But rather, al raket yitzamim me'apurim, v'kiyim mitzvahs purim sheba sheni. So therefore, it also impacts adoration. V'lechein boim heim la'achar halachas v'dinei yudal tasvav v'adar stam, mekiven sha'adinim shebesiman zeh, hinam toitza u'mesuvav v'me'apurim ha'ikrim, ha'cholim b'shanim u'beres b'adar sheni. So therefore, it makes sense to first talk about Purim that's in Adar Sheni, and then to talk about Purim Katan. Then the Rebbe goes on, Avol, that's Apipshat, that's the simple way of learning it. Avol, Kol in Yonei HaToyrim, Betachas HaDiuk, totally exact, Ubem min Yonei HaOlam, Shekol Davar Sheba Olam, Bashgacha Pratis, Ubekavanim Miduyekes. Harei Shemuvin, it's understood. Shezeh Shedinei Purim Nimtzam B'Soif Chelek Orach Chaim, Ubehen Atzmam Hasiyum Hu B'Hilchos Purim. So in general, Purim is at the end of Orach Chaim. So we gave a logical reason. But everything is Bashgacha Pratis. Purim is the end of Orach Chaim, and even more so, Purim Katan is at the end of Orach Chaim. There's a kavon in it. There's a lesson in it. Yudal b'tesvav adoration. Ein ze rak mekivim shekach yoytze adavar lefi seder azmanim sha'halachas min hamukdem ha'meucher bezman. But other atzma, here he says mitzad tadir, so you're going to put first Purim and then you're going to put Purim Katan. ובדרך ממילא בוים הם בסוף חלק אורח חיים. אלא מכיוון שבזה ישנו גם דיוק וכוונה מיוחדת. בזה שדינים אלו הם הסיום והחוסם של חלק אורח חיים, מודגש עניין בסדר אורח חיים של האדם. The person's life, the person's path in life, the person's way in life, the conclusion of it, it ends with Purim and Purim Katan. And we'll explain what that means. Mekiven, it's supposed to say. The Leben, the person's life, this is the end of it. This is the Teitzah. This is what comes after he does all the mitzvahs, like we're soon going to explain. Mekiven, sheyesh la'akal, it's supposed to, I think, it's missing a vav over here. Sha'akol hoylach achar achitu. Everything goes after the end. We're going to skip the titles. L'churin it levayar zois, ba'azbaras toichen hamilim ha'achroines, shebehem mesayim haramah es chelek orach chaim. The Ramah is actually the last thing. After the Mechaber, after the Beis of Kara writes what he writes, so then the Ramah speaks about what is the halacha about having a meal on Purim Katan. Obviously, Purim, you have a meal. The question is, does Purim Katan also have a din of a meal? But then the Ramah says, Ve'ein noyegin kein. Mikol makim, yar bektsas besuda, kedei lotzes yidei machmirim, and then he brings a pasuk from Kehelos, I think it is, Mishlei, V'toiv leiv mishtatamid. Someone that's good of heart is always celebrating. So you don't need to have an excuse to make a meal. You don't have to have, as the Rebbe will explain, a chiyuv to make a meal. And the Rebbe is going to analyze this towards the end of the Sicha. First he says the machmir, then he says that we don't do it, and then he says it's better to do it, then he says toiv leiv mishtatamid. What's this whole back and forth? Just say, you want to say it's a machloik, it's fine. You want to say it should be machmir like a certain day, fine. This whole gang is trying to teach you something additional. Muva besvarim shachasima shel Ramah hi me'ein hapsicha shel Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim. Haramah peseach b'shivisi avayla negdi samid. He says a person, as soon as he gets up, he's got to recognize that the Eibishter is standing over him. The word tamid is the emphasis over here. V'asiyim v'chaysim hu of the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim v'toiv leiv mishta tamid. Sheshtei hapamim tamid hem keneged hashnei tmidim kisidram. Shnaim layim oilo tamid. It says in the Chumash, beneged the tamid shel shachar, the tamid shel bein abayim. We call it tamid. So these two tamids of shivisi in the morning, in the beginning of Orach Chaim, and toiv leiv mishta tamid by the end of Orach Chaim is keneged these two tmidim. Question is what does it mean? Echad abiyunim bazahu cheluk Orach Chaim murkav me mitzvahs v'dinim. Adam tzarech l'kaimah midei yom b'yomai u'b'meshach kol hayom, like we mentioned before. Meis kumay mishinasoi v'ashchivasi b'layla. And then, after talking about the Seder HaYom, what goes on throughout the entire day, then he goes on with mitzvahs v'dinim shu meshach hashana kula al Seder HaShana. B'chlal kshurim mitzvahs v'dinim elu, whether the daily mitzvahs or the yearly annual mitzvahs, b'zmanim mesuyamim b'meshach hayom v'alayla b'meshach hashana shemechuyavim l'kaimam b'zman mesuyim b'shana ve'enam shayachim l'zman acher b'meshach hashana, or a different time during the day. It's very specific. Shachris yidam in the morning. Rosh Chodesh, you celebrate on Rosh Chodesh. Pesach is Pesach. It's each time, each mitzvah that talks about Orach Chaim has its certain time. Aval haschala shel Orach Chaim, and also gam shel ha'adam, the person's life begins with, and also visiyumai, and it concludes with, hashnei tmidim. Shechiyuvam hu tmidi, it's constant. The Rebbe is playing off the word tamid. We know that the word tamid can have two meanings. Tamid can mean constantly, 24/7, or tamid can mean something that you do consistently. So the simple reason why the karbanos in the morning and the afternoon in the Beis Hamikdash were called karban tamid was because it was something that was done not 24/7, but it was done constantly, every single day. Shabbos, Yom Tov, weekday, you brought the karban tamid, so that's why it was called tamid. Oh, but over here, what the Rebbe is saying with the word Tamid, but about the first Tamid and the last Tamid in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim is that's Tamid in the Orach Chaim of a person. Not like, let's say, Shachris, which is in the morning, or Pesach, which is during Pesach, but these two things, Shivisi Avayil and Negdi Samid, and Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid are Tamid. B'chol zman yimei chaya adam b'meshach kol hashana kula u'b'meshach kol hayom kula midei yom b'yomei. V'lchein musadorim heim ba'ofen shetamid echad nimtza b'toy roish v'tchila lo'er chayim v'atamid hasheni b'toy siyumi v'chayis mayim. Tchilas ha'shulchan aruch shevisi avayla nagdi samid hi ha'nekuda shel yiras Hashem. Kifi shemayrich u'mefarat ha'ramah Sham, right away over there in the beginning, he says, "Kishayasim ha'adam ha'libay sha'amelech ha'gad ha'kadosh baruch hu asher malek ha'la'aretz kvoidei omed Allah v'roya v'ma'asav chulu miyad yagia elav ha'yira v'achna b'fachd Hashem yisbaruch u'boishte v'menu tamid." So that's the tamid, that's the yira of the Eibishter. So we know that the message of Shavisi Avayil Negdi Samid is to have the yira before Hashem. V'ilu hasiyum v'toiv leiv mishta tamid. So the Rebbe goes on to say that these two things are 24/7. They're tamid. Vishnei inyanim elu tzrichim liyis etzel ha'adam b'eifin shel tamid b'chol zman b'chol avoida sha'yehudi oived. Whatever the Yid does, sarach lizbate etzloi inyan hayira v'achna v'gam inyan hasimcha ba'avodas Hashem ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. Soon we're going to see, but I just want to point this out, that even though everything that a Yid does expresses these two Tmidim, but not necessarily b'shas Maisa is he fully aware of it. Let's say, the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Mem Aleph, so he says, before a person does certain mitzvahs, or before he's going to learn, or before he puts on tefillin and talis, he has to have in mind this same inyan, b'negeya, that the Melech Malch HaMelech HaKadosh Baruch Hu is standing over him, and he has to serve him, and so on. But L'Poil, for example, when you're actually learning, there's no place in the brain for two thoughts. If you're learning about a Baya V'Rava, or you're learning about a Mal Klam and Soil Klam, there's no room in your brain to keep the words Shavisi Avayil Negdi Samid. So it's there. It's there in the subconscious because you approached it already with that gang. But you're learning because you started learning with that thought, so therefore it's based on it. The same thing, the Simcha, we're going to talk about soon. Not necessarily every single moment of the day is the Simcha going to be begolui, and because the true Simcha is at the conclusion. The true Simcha is when there is like an accomplishment. And we'll see as he goes on about this. Gim. Valpizi esh lavayan mashasiyim Orach Chaim hu behilchos Megillah Purim. Yedua shel chol sug kav miyuchad ba'avodas Hashem yeshno yoim or zman kavua b'shana shebemiyuchad mesugol umasim la'oifen avoda zeh. Shemezman zeh loichim es hakoyach b'inyan zeh v'hashpa al avoda zu b'meshch hashana kula. 2 points. First of all, the fact that, for example, Pesach comes out in Nisan, and Rosh Hashanah is in Tishrei, and Purim is in Adar. The date is al derech, like we spoke about last week, I think it was. Megalgalim zchus liyom zakai. The day itself is a yom zakai, even before anything happened on that date, and therefore min hashamayim they were conveyed that date should be the date that Pesach should come out. That date should be the date of Purim. That date should be whatever Yom Tov comes out. That's one point. Another point is that from that Yom Tov, we take koiches from that Yom Tov for the rest of the year. And we're going to talk examples of this in a moment. Hanesinas koyach levetoiv leiv mishta tamid lesimcha b'avodas Hashem b'meshach kol hashana kula. That's what it means toiv leiv mishta tamid. Nilkachas miyimei hapurim mikiven shepurim hu azman shemarben besuda v'simcha b'mida hachi gdoila yoiser ma'asher b'chol hayom tovim v'chag hashana ukvi shenifsek betur b'shulchan aruch mitzvah laharbes besudas purim v'chayvin ish l'psum b'puraya j'layada acholu. So the Rebbe is going to ask a very basic question. What about Zman Simchaseinu? Isn't Sukkot or even Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, isn't that the time when we take Simcha for the rest of the year? Why am I saying that it's Purim? So the Rebbe is going to be mechadish here, a very interesting thing. It depends when. The Rebbe is going to say that in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, then Sukkot was the makir and the nesinas koyach for Simcha for the rest of the year. But being that we're in a time of Golus, we need to have an extra koyach of Simcha that comes from Purim. Let's see it inside. The aim is of stirim lamavur bekam koy mishchag Sukkot man Sukkosenu hu amakir lesimcha al kol hashana kula. Ukiyadua shas hakoyach leinyanim haklolim avodas Hashem loichim hachodesh hakloli. Chodesh Tishrei is called a general month. It's called Rosh. Tishrei is in the word Reishis, not just because it's the beginning of the year, but also because it's like the head that includes in it the Chayis for the whole year. So Rosh Hashanah gives us, like we're soon going to say, the idea of Kabbalah soil for a whole year, we get from Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah has a man, Shel Tamid Chuni Aleichem, V'Hamokir Shemenu Shoivim Yir Shemayim Al Kol Hashanah. Yom Kippur, we get the Koyach Al Inyan HaTshuva, which means when I want to have Yiras Shamayim in middle of Cheshvan, I have it because of Rosh Hashanah. When I want to do Tshuva in middle of Shvat, I have it because of Yom Kippur. Which all goes into the category, like we say in davening, Zman Simchaseinu. Loichim as hakoyach shekol inyanei Torah mitzvahs b'meshach hashana ye'asu metoch simcha. So, and this is, and we can see the concept of this. It's a hint. It's not open, but we see a hint for this from Rambam. Rambam at the end of Hilchos Lulav, which comes after he talks about the Hilchos Sukkah, he has over there Hilchos Lulav. Mamish at the end, he says over there, She'inyan Simcha Shal Mitzvah, Simcha She'yismach Adam Ba'asiyas HaMitzvah Chulu, the Rambam says, Avodah Gdoili Hi Chulu, Ba Behemshech LeSimcha Yiseiresh Ha'is VeMikdash B'Chag HaSukkos. He learns it out from the extra Simcha that was in the time of Sukkot in the Beis HaMikdash. So even in the Rambam, who doesn't use, let's say, Chassidus language, that you have the Koyach, it's mashpia for the rest of the year, but even the limud of the Hayrah to be besimcha, he takes it from Sukkot. So therefore, how does this fit in what we said before, that the koyach for simcha on the whole year comes from Purim? V'yashloim, the Rebbe answers, shezeo rak bizman shebeis hamikdash haya kayim. Kasher kol ha'inyanim hayu kisikunam ubishleim musam. L'chein nitin haya oz, lekabel chayis v'avoyas Hashem b'meshach kol hashana kula, me'ayam tovim shebechodesh Tishrei, ubekach haya dai. That was enough. Tishrei was strong enough to give us the koyach for the whole year. Val derech ze lochus in simcha v'avoyas Hashem, me'asimcha yisera shoya b'migdash b'chag HaSukkos. Like we brought before from the Rambam. It was a simcha in the Beis HaMikdash. Ma'she'enkim b'zman ha'golus, zman shel helm v'hester, ein dai b'simchas chag HaSukkos lifel v'avodas kol hashana, mekiven she'in yonim kefi she'im oimdim b'chodesh Tishrei, heim al derech mashal, like we mentioned before, kefi shechayis kol eivarim nimtzas adayim b'rosh. In the head of a person, over there is the main place where the neshama resides. So therefore, all the koiches of the rest of the body started off in the head. But it's very head-like. It's very spiritual. It's very ruchnistic. Shesham hachayis nailis milis labich or lahachis zebore aguf. It's beyond coming into the body. Val derech ze benimshel shebetishrei nimtzoyim in yone avodas Hashem bedarga gevoya yoyser mechidei shetuchel lias la shayches la avodas haprotius kvi shein oimdes begilu avodas adam meshach kol hashana kula. And the Rebbe says in footnote 30, but in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, everything was much higher, and the influence of the Beis HaMikdash was strong enough to bring it out even to the rest of the year. And the Rebbe in footnote 31 says, not just Karev Yoiser, but it had to be a stronger Simcha. Purim is L'Poyel, a greater Simcha, as Simchadik as we are on Sukkot and even Simchas Torah, in a certain way, Purim Simcha is even greater. Miyayim v'darga she'einam b'chodesh hakloli, hamashpia v'mei hashana. Ubinyaneinu hatoiv leiv mishtatamit hasimcha tmidis v'meshach yemei hashana nilkachas And the Rebbe says, Yeshloimer gam de Chag HaSukkos b'emtzos, hasimcha shb'mei Purim. In other words, it's even the Simcha of Sukkos comes because the Simcha of Purim. The Simcha of Purim is so powerful that it's even mashpia Simcha into Sukkos. It's not that Sukkot has its own Simcha, but it's not strong enough to come out. So you need to have Purim for that extra push. The Rebbe says possibly also Sukkot gets from Purim as well. Shehei mimei Hashana, the days of Purim are from the regular days of the year. V'sheniyu limei Simcha bi u'mitzad hagolus. That's even more so. We're trying to say that the Simcha of Purim should affect us even though we're in such a low state, we're in a time of Golus. Purim is a Golus Yom Tov. It's an idea of Simcha that came about in Golus, so therefore it could affect us more that we are now in Golus. Another thing. Tishrei, it's removed from the year because you're not allowed to do malacha. Sukkos, Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, these are Yom Tovim. So again, it doesn't impact so much the daily life because daily life means going to work. But Purim, you're allowed to do malacha. There's no Isur malacha on Purim. V'lechein b'choltam lifos hasimcha atmidis b'chol matzav bo Yehudi nimtza. Purim has that koyach more so than Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. Gam b'mayim the matzav shel chol in weekdays. Goes. Then the Rebbe says a geschmack word. The Rambam versus the Ramah. The Rambam we brought before, and the Ramah of Tov Lev Mishka Tamid. Val Piza Yuvan Gam Achiluk Bezeh Ben Sefer Rambam Shulchan Aruch. HaRambam Bechibure Medaber Benegel Inyanim Gefi Shem Gam Kunam Shlem Musam Koils Man Abayis. The difference between the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch is the Rambam speaks to all situations and times. Many of the halachos of the Rambam is about things having to do in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, he's talking about the ideal. He's talking about the highest level. So where does he learn out the simcha that a person has to serve the Eibusher b'simcha? He uses the Beis HaMikdash because he's talking in a Beis HaMikdash type of level. Mash'enki Sefer HaShulchan Aruch medaber rak menegel ladinim hanoigim bezman hazeh ubezman hazeh loichim as ikar an sinas koyach lina simcha mimei Purim v'lachein ba inyan toiv leiv mishta tamid betur hemshech v'choisim shel hilchos Megillah Purim, because we are in these days we need to have the koyach from Purim. So then the Rebbe says this is all about Purim concluding, but in the beginning of the Sicha we wanted to know what is the significance, what's the Hirah from the fact that's in the Halochos of Purim itself, what concludes Orach Chaim, specifically Purim Katan. El she'ein ze bir masbik mekiven shebezeh mevu'eres rak shayches siyum HaShulchan Aruch lePurim b'chlal. Aval adayin nishal lo borer atam l'siyum Shulchan Aruch b'hilchos Purim Katan shemekiven shekol inyanim b'Torah hem b'diuk, like we said, kanal. Chayovim loymar shel l'siyum Orach Chaim yesh na shayches miyuchedes l'toichen inyan Purim Katan. L'choyre yesh loymar Shabir anal b'sif gimel gufim noisin mokim lahadgoshes hasiyum lePurim Katan yoiser masher lePurim b'chlal. Sharei lamroi shePurim muter b'asiyas malachim. So therefore we said, since it's not a day like Yom Tov, like Sukkot, or Shmini Atzeres, or Simchas Torah, so it has more to do with the Chulin days. So therefore it influences more the regular days. So if you look at it, but Purim and Purim Katan also has a similar difference. Purim Katan is more of a regular day than Purim is. Purim is full with all types of mitzvahs and all types of things we have to do. But the tefillah is different. If you want to work on Purim, it's difficult, because there's a lot of things you need to do during the day of Purim. Mash'enkim Purim Katan she'eina kasher mitzvahs miyuchades lefichach yesh lo shayches oid yoyser kroivim kol yimei hashana ubemeila gam mashpah simcha gedoyla yoyser aleim mishtatamid. But the Rebbe says there's two questions about this, or two problems with this. Al she'iyaf shaloimer kein mekivan alef Then you could say that because you're mechuyev to be marba b'simcha in other rishon, so that extra simcha of other rishon impacts the simcha of the rest of the year. What's the psak din of the Ramah? The Ramah paskins, that's not the minhag. That's not what we do. So you add something, you marba a little bit. If there would be a chiyuv simcha, so then you can say the chiyuv simcha of Purim Katan, is mashpia and gives you energy for an entire year. But here the Ramah says there's no obligation, there's no chiyuv. So how can it be mashpia the rest of the year? Beis, and the Rebbe says, this is the main problem. Keitzad nitten loimer shana sinas kayach l'mishna tamid. Simcha tamid is b'chal shana v'shana b'Purim Katan. Hakayim rak b'shana muberes. Purim Katan only comes out whenever there's a shana muberes. That's Purim Katan. So that's going to be mashpia simcha on the rest of the year. What rest of the year? Which year? Only twice out of 7 years, or 3 times, 7 times in 21 years. However, the cheshbon of the shana muberes is. But Yuvin calls them behegdem abir besim de Ramah v'toiv lev mishlet tamid k'fi shehuva la'el mamavor besfarim kavanasei l'ramiz al inyan hasimcha ba'avodas Hashem. The lechura madua shnei tmidim mechulakim ba'ofen gazeh sheshvisi avayla negdi samid ma'fia betchilas ha'shulchan aruch v'ilu v'toiv lev mishlet tamid la'achrei kol orach chaim v'soifim mamish. We said they're both tamid. Not like the Tamid Shel Shachar, Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim, that they have certain times of the days that are constant, but they're always 24/7. If Shavisa Aval Nagdi Samid is 24/7 and Simcha is 24/7, why do you separate them? One's at the beginning, one's at the end. Shavisa Aval Nagdi Samid, who yisoid v'ikar avodas Hashem v'lechein hu aroish v'aschol l'chol orach chaim. So in the same way, Tzarach Hayim me'ein zaliyas gam b'yachas le'inyan v'toiv lev mishta tamid mekiven shagam simcha hi inyan yisoidi b'avodas Hashem hachem atfilas koil birchsa shachar. So you shouldn't wait till the end of Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim already before birchsa shachar, just like Shavuos Haval Nagdi Samid. You already talk about you have to serve the Eibusher b'simcha. Yeshleim rabir b'zem b'shnei hatmidim b'tchilas Orach Chaim v'siyumai miskaven haramah l'shnei hatnuas loikif v'shein boim kechelek ma'avodas Hashem kiyum ha'shulchan aruch el k'fi shein bois b'toir aleph hagdama l'fnei atchal shulchan aruch beis siyum la'achreg mar kiyum ha'shulchan aruch. In other words, like this. Up till now, he was talking about how in our entire avodah there has to be permeated Shavuos Haval Nagdi Samid, and has to be permeated with simcha. But then there's another point. Before, and as an introduction, Agdam, before we even get into Shulchan Aruch, there's Shavuos Haval Nagdi Samid. Then there's another inyan. In addition to the idea of Simcha and Shavuos Haval Nagdi Samid going through the entire day, through the entire year, there is at the end of everything, to top it all off, the cherry on top, that's the idea of Simcha Toiv Lev Mishra Tamid. Lefnei Yudi Maschos Avedasi Bekim Torah Mitzvahs, not just how he does his Torah Mitzvahs, but before he does his Torah Mitzvahs, Nidreshes Lefnei Chen Ashavisi Haval Negdi Samid Kabbalas Oil Malchusi Yisbarach. Obalosh Chazal, why did they make Shema before Vayim Shemaya? You kabel all of Oil Mach Shemayim Tchila, Vacharch Makabel all of Oil Mitzvahs. So the same thing over here, before Halacha begins, before Orach Chaim, before he tells you what you're supposed to do, mitzvahs, he tells you, first things first. Shavuos Haval Nagdi Samid. Kabbalah Zuda El Malchusi Yisbarach Aymedes Valkapanim Tzricha Lamed Begoli Lefnei Shemaschila Avodah Apel Shel Kimat Torah Mitzvahs. La'achar Shekvar Nosem B'Toch Kimat Torah Mitzvahs, the Rebbe says, Einer Geshes Begoli Atnuah Shel Kabbalah So Malchus. What we said before, for example, when he's learning, he can't be thinking about that's the Eibusher's Torah and so on. Before he learns Torah, he makes the Birchsa Torah to realize he's learning Hashem's Torah. But when he's learning, he's thinking about Abaye V'Rav. He's talking about Mal and Soiviv. Ki im Kabbalas Oil Mitzvahs. What is felt? Kabbalso, mitzvahs, mash makabel latzim levatzeh, b'poels, gzeres, v'tzivui hamelech. He's into the halacha. I have to make sure to do the mitzvah right. I have to do what it says in Shulchan Aruch. Ul'acher mekain, b'siyum v'gmar ul'achri avoida, yesh naya inyan shavatoiv le mishtei tamid, la'acher shesiyum avidosim magia inyan haschar shel avoida, שזהו השמחה שיש ליהודי מזה שביצע אבידוסוי ועידי זה יסאחדם הקדוש ברוך הוא מצווה מלשון צוותא וחיבור, joining with Hashem. In other words, in addition to the simcha that a person is supposed to feel when he's doing the mitzvah, and even a simcha when he's not even doing the mitzvahs like we're going to talk about later on also, there is the simcha from accomplishing. There is the simcha at the end because I had the tzafsa v'chibur with the Eibishter. There is the simcha from the fact that I was mekayim a mitzvah. So that's like a schar. That like comes afterwards. That's why toiv leiv mishtei tamid begolui is at the end. The simcha zu yichol is begolui rak achrik mara avoidam b'shah shoyisik ba'avoida harei afal pisha tzarich liyis metech simcha ivdos Hashem b'simcha aval mikiven sha'azu be'emtza is askus ba'avoidas Hashem. Why? That's an interesting thing. He's too busy getting things right. It's like a lot of times, there's a famous maril concerning the Seder, that you have to be very careful with it, but you also have to fulfill it b'simcha. And a lot of times, people have problems with it because they're so involved in all the technical things and the size of the matzah and the egg shouldn't roll off and the matzah shouldn't get wet. There are like so many things going on. The kids should ask the manishtana. This kid shouldn't fall asleep. There's too much happening to really be able to experience the simcha b'shas matzah. So he says because there's the hergish of Kabbal's oil, Yiras Hashem, Hanidrish, Kasher Oivdim, Sakadosh Baruch Hu. Davke la'achre gemara avoida, that's when the simcha bursts forth. I got to say that the kids asked the manishtana, you have to fight, it worked out. And the Rebbe gives an example back to Chodesh Tishrei. Valderech, kefishes of Chodesh Tishrei, a Chodesh HaKlali. Berosh Shana v'chulu yom neiroim. Neiroim is from the word Yira. Avoida shall v'gilu berada. Gila is simcha. But how do you have the simcha? Chassidus says it's covered over with the ra'ada. Externally, it's fear. Kiloymar afal pisha oz yeshna inyan hagila v'asimcha. V'adrab, the Rebbe always explains simcha gedoyla b'yoyser mekachsha mamlech zakadosh baruch hu b'ter melech. Hareyu aval melubish b'yira v'gilu berada. Gilu ya simcha hu b'siyum hamoyadim. So just like in Tishrei, when does the Simcha really burst forth? Only by Simchas Torah, at the end of the whole Tishrei. So now, it's further going to be understood the difference between the Rambam, the way he talks about the Simcha, and Shulchan Aruch. וזהו ההבדל בין עניין השמחה כפי שמדובר ברמב"ם לזה המדובר ברמה. הרמב"ם מסייך הלכות לולב מדבר מנהגי השמחה של מצווה. השמחה שישמח אדם בעשייס המצווה. ושמחה זו, והמצווה לוקחים מהשמחה יסיירה שהייסה בחג הסוכות, שהיא חלק ממצווה שמחה של המועדות, כפי שהרמב"ם כוסף שם. בשולחן ערוך אבל מדובר בנגיע לטוב לב משתתמד. What does it mean, Toiv Leiv Mishtatamid? Hasimcha b'fnei atzma. Not a simcha that's connected with a mitzvah. Toiv Leiv Mishtatamid. He's not doing Tamid a mitzvah. Mitzad zeh sha'ani Yehudim. V'tamid meuchadim im HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shezeh ba l'dei gilui b'gmar ha'avoida kanal v'simcha zu mudgeshes b'toichne shel Purim Katan b'frat. Yemei simcha shebachal hashana kula Yesh lem mitzvahs, halachos, u'minhagim akshurim b'yom zeh. Every day, every Yom Tov, every time of the year has certain mitzvahs. Kach shehergish hasimcha mushpa gam mi'inyanim v'hergeshim acherim haboim l'dbei bitui b'avodas Hashem In other words, he has the particular mitzvah, asiyas mitzvah. He's busy building the sukkah. He's busy sitting in the sukkah. He's busy shaking the lulav and asrik. Or he's doing the minhag of akafis and Simchas Torah, for example, that we're going to talk later on about. Afilu Simchas Purim, not Purim Katan, but regular Purim. Shetzrich aliyas adol yada. So adol yada means you're completely removed from hergeshim and from other things going on, but still, it's coming out of something, and it's not the whole day. You're not adol yada from the minute Purim comes in till the end of Purim. Adol yada actually has a specific time. Yeshnam oid mitzayim. If you're going to be adol yada when you got to hear the Megillah the night before or the next morning, it's a big problem. You got to be yada at that time. Kanal, there's Krisa Megillah, V'shloach manas, matan slav yoinim chulu. Va'adrab, noigim lasa sudas Purim rak la'achrei mincha. Once you got all the other mitzvahs out of the way, now you can prava adol yada. Mashenkim Purim Katan, ein bei mitzvahs ham yuchadas b'yom zeh. Hadavar boy chaluk yom zeh mishara yom b'simcha shaboy. Purim Katan has no mitzvahs. There's nothing you have to do. Even like we're going to explain, that Amos says, we don't have a chiyuv and a suda. So even that mitzvah, the chiyuv of simcha and a suda is not there. So it's pure simcha. Nimtza shebesimcha shebepurim katan, eina moravim shum in yonim acherim hakshurim avoyis Hashem, hasimcha yi betoyara. Al pize yesh levayir asiyum loshn harama, v'toiv lev mishtatamid. Ubehegdim. And here he's going to say the different questions that I mentioned, but again, what the Ramah is saying. The Ramah says a whole bunch of things over there. He says, I'll see him Lashon Ramah, after he says that we're not noyig to be making a suda on Purim Katan, Mikol Mokim Yarbek Taz B'Sudachul. Misakev HaTaz maybe, the Taz on the Shulchan Aruch brings down, Ba'agot, Hashbat, Simen Kufa, and Ches Chosav, the Yesh Laharbois, V'Rabbeinu Yechil Parij, one of the Bali Tosfos, Rogel laharbis ul hazmin b'nei adam kimashmos l'shoina mishnah ein ben other. It says ein ben other rishon l'other sheni only mikra megillah and matanos lovyonim shalchmanos, which means when it comes to the mishnah, it doesn't make a distinction in the mishnah between other rishon and other sheni. Comes out that in other rishon there is a chiyuv of mishnah. The shaper mesayim ramakan v'toivle mishnah tamid. That's why, based on what Rabbi Chilm Paris said, based on what the Mishnah says, Ein ben Adar, Alf Adar Sheni, only these in Yanim, so therefore, when the Ramah concludes with Toiv Lev Mishnah Tamid, so it makes sense. So then the question we're going to ask, so why does he say, Ve'ein Noegin Kain, and so on? It doesn't fit in what the Taz is saying. Mizem moving. Sha'ataz loymid shebezah sha'ara ma mesayim v'toiv lev mishta tamid kavanosh lahadgish ulahayrish shesoif soif ein dai biyar b'ktsas b'suda sh'amar kodim. Because he brought from Reb Chilma Paris and he brought from the Tashbetz that they said that they were marba b'suda without any ktsas, no qualifier. They were marba b'suda. El sheyesh laharbes b'suda v'simcha me'ein k'fi shezeh ba'adar sheni ein ben adar rishon la'adar sheni only the other mitzvahs. If so, v'tzarech biur madua ein ramah oimre b'furish yarba b'simcha. Why does he seem to be playing games? He's saying, we don't. Toiv Mishnah Tamid means that we do. So if that's what it means, say it. V'rak meram ezois b'lashon v'loy toiv Mishnah Tamid. Yesh loymar shezel me'ein achalukim shematzinu bedarges chiyuv asimcha bechlal. Chiyuv asimcha b'moyedim chiyuv min haTorah. That's one level of simcha. V'samachta b'chagecha. Comes Yom Tov, there's a chiyuv midayraisa to be samech. Then there's a second level of chiyuv. Not as strong, seemingly, a chiyuv like a min haTorah, a midayraisa chiyuv. Hasimcha kshura b'nisach hamayim. Doesn't say it anywhere in the Chumash. Wa'alach al Moshe miSinai she'eina mefurish b'Torah shebeksav rak the Rabbanon samchu akroi shezel simchas beis she'eva. Then there is a further step. It's very interesting. It's all in the same period. It's all in the 9 days of Sukkot. We have these three levels. V'yesh la hasimcha akshura ba'akofes b'shmin atzer simchas Torah she'ein chiyuv medivrei soifrim. It's not even a mitzvah darabanan. It's v'rak minhag, the way it says in the halacha over there. So the royim b'poil sha'simcha shebesimchas beis ha'she'eva he simcha g'doyla yoser simcha yisera g'ab simchas yomtiv b'chlal v'asimcha ba'akofes he keminhag Yisrael g'doyla oid yoser. It would make sense that a simcha that says openly in the Torah, that should be the greatest simcha. A simcha, it's only halacha l'maish misinai, maybe not so much. And something that's only a minhag, this way, that, just the opposite. The simcha, it's openly in the Torah, it's taka big simcha, but it doesn't come to the nischamayim, simchas beis hasheva. And the simchas beis hasheva doesn't come to the simcha of akafas by simchas Torah. Simchas beis hasheva yeshem chilukim ben Yehudim by Simcha loy hayu ois noisel gedolim v'anshim ma'isa ma'shenkin kol ha'ambaim liris v'lishmoya. They're only watching the people being mishtatev. Abel b'simchas ha'kafos mishtatevim kol ha'Yehudim. Mevur b'zem shehi anisenes. It's actually not a stira. It's actually makes sense. Kuf chavtes, Amud kuf chavtes. Kitchol sha'simcha hi amuke v'gdoili yoser. Kach toikef achiyuv muat yoser. Hasimcha ba metoich ha-Yehudi atzmai. Val derech mailas divrei soifrim al divrei Torah k'maimer azal arevim alai divrei soifrim chavivim alai divrei soifrim. In other words, why are the words of the Rabbanon more special than the words of Torah? Because it has to do with me. The words of the Chachamim are coming from the person, from Klal Yisrael itself. Bezeh sheYehudim loichim al atzmam gedorim v'chumris she'einam meforashes b'Torah shebechsav niris hachavivus hasimcha v'tainuk sheyesh lam b'kiyum ratzon ha'elyon, more so than just doing what's in Torah shebechsav. Ibunyanenu hasimcha sheyesh Allah tzivui mefurish b'Torah keloymar shenitin l'chayev b'zeh as kulam b'shaveh matzbiya al kach shehi lefi mailas ha'adam sheyeshna gam mitzvah pachas sheba'adam. It doesn't make a difference, higher or lower. Hasimcha yisera shebesimchas beis hasheva hakshura b'nisach hamayim she'aleha ein chiyuv mefurish b'Torah shebeksav matzbiya al simcha g'doyla v'amuka yoser. Because the simcha is greater, there it's less open, it's less befedish. V'akafes shebachlal einem chiyuv. It's only a minhag. Aflei chiyuv d'Rabbanan ki minhag bilvad. What does it mean minhag? Minhag means something that Yidden started doing. That's what the word minhag. Nahagu. That was something that they started doing. Mevatas hasimcha amuka oid yoser haba mitzad b'nei Yisrael asher heim chitru v'inhigos hasimcha. And this is something that Rebbe spoke about in different Simchas Torah Sichos about the mila and the great level of the Simcha of Simchas Torah. So now the Rebbe is going to apply this like a Purim Katan. Purim Katan, that Ramah doesn't say we're mechuyev to make a Simcha. He just says Toiv leiv mishta tamid. Why? Because it's much deeper and much greater. Val derech zav yiseirim azeh u'menegel Purim Katan. Zeh sharamah meivias ala harbes b'simcha rak b'oifun shel remes v'sipur kepirish hataz. He doesn't say you're mechuyev to do it, or the minhag is to do it this way. Toiv leiv mishta tamid. It's a nice thing to be always. Himkivan she darga nailas besimcha she'aleh ein chiyuv mefurish b'Shulchan Aruch afil loy betur minhag. Not even al derech minhag akavas esmin atzer simchas Torah she'avna mein kasav b'Shulchan Aruch aval Ramah kaisvay the minhag of hakafas. Till the Ramah it doesn't say in Shulchan Aruch. In the Mechaber it doesn't say that there's a hakafas. Just a peltic thing. We grow up, hakafas is like. But you look at the Mechaber, it doesn't say it. The Ramah is the one that says about hakafas. Go shoyne v'koyr about that simchas Torah hakafas. V'koyr yom tov ha'achron simchas Torah levish smeichim v'oisim b'yisudas mishta l'gamra shel Torah chulu v'oid nagu l'hakiv tifra Torah chulu v'akol mishum simcha. But since he says that it's nahagu, so once it says in Shulchan Aruch nahagu, it becomes part of Shulchan Aruch. It's already the halacha is that's the minhag. So it's already part of a chiyuv. It doesn't have, therefore, such a powerful simcha. Mekiven sheminhag amuv v'ramah hu gam kein din v'chiyuv. Yesh loymar dahainu kanal. Mekiven shesimchas purim yal derech hasimcha ba begmar ulachar avoidam should be yoysa la'achrei v'nailas ala avoida, like we said before. B'meila hi af nailas meizoyim shel chiyuv. It's after you have the chiyuvim of Orach Chaim. After you did all these great things. Hasimcha ba v'noitzeres ma Yehudi atzmai. He is so overwhelmed with the simcha. Besigren acher ktsas. Ilo hayat sivuya minhag al simcha. If the Ramah would have said, you should be sameach. Hareish zeg gufa imisparish. Simcha ki chelik mechiyuv kim Shulchan Aruch. It's not beyond Shulchan Aruch. It's something that Shulchan Aruch is being mechayev you to do. If it's something Shulchan Aruch is being mechayev you to do, so you have already another feeling mixed in. So it's not simcha b'tarasa. You already have the idea. You're doing it out of Kabbalah soil. So it's not pure simcha. Yes, loimer shalchein simcha zu. He agdama mevias simcha la'asad lavoi. Okay, if you shamagin Avram maybe I'll divra arma. Beforehand we brought the Taz. So now we're going to look at the other side of the two sides of the Shulchan Aruch. It says v'toiv leiv mishta tamid. What does it mean v'toiv leiv mishta tamid? What does it mean constantly? B'simchos mitzvahs elekeinu lahamid oz yimolis chokpinu. With the happiness of the mitzvahs of the Eibishter, that we're going to be mekayim and reach the time that our mouth will be filled with simcha. Oz yimolis, it's talking about Mashiach's times. Ula'asid lavi simchas oilam al roishim. What's it mean, simchas oilam? Shakavana b'zehi gam shetiyah simcha tmidis v'simcha b'fnei atzma, not just because you're doing the mitzvah. To the simcha of Mashiach's times, magim aidei isafa b'simcha b'zman hagolus. The Rebbe says in many places that we know that to be mamshich, the hamshachas of la'asad lavi in the times of Mashiach, we need to do now me'ain what's going to be in Mashiach's times. So the Rebbe says, since in Mashiach's times it's going to be shleimus hasimcha, az yimolis chayk. So the Rebbe says in different places, what's the achana for that? What will bring that closer? For b'simcha now. U'ba'oifin shal mailim b'kodesh, gam b'kodesh shal toiv leiv mishta tamid, which will increase. V'zeh mevi v'mheir v'meina mamish simchas oilam al roisham.